What does it really take to lead without burning out? In this episode of View from the Top, I sit down with Erin Newkirk to talk about the inner work that most leaders ignore but can't afford to. We dig into career transitions, energy management, and why alignment isn't a soft skill. It's the foundation of success. So if you've ever wondered how to redefine success and lead with purpose, this conversation will challenge you to think differently. Let's dive in. Welcome, Erin, to the View from the Top podcast.
Hi, Jaime. Thanks for having me. New podcast, new year.
New year, same guest. So for those of you who listen to the Superpower Success podcast, Erin was my last guest. When I was ready to kind of wrap it up, she's my support animal. I love you, and I wanted you to be the last guest. And then I was like, well, of course you need to be my first guest on the View Top as I revamp this. And you've been with me along on this journey of surviving greatness and just this idea of kind of the phases we go through and this kind of climb of the mountain and getting to the top, which we'll talk about your story. And I think this is so important. I think it's always been important, but it's really important right now. And you're in the executive circles of just the burnout and the people that are striving, but they're not really even sure what they're striving for anymore. And I just have so many of those conversations. So that's part of our discussion today is just like sharing your story, but maybe some lessons and some wisdom that you've learned and knowing there's a lot more lessons, right, that are coming on your next climb. But what are those points of wisdom? And so when you think back on your success story up to this point, the climb, the mountain that you've been climbing, just give us a quick background of what's that look like? What are some of those kind of pivotal moments that you remember on that climb?
It's great. I mean, thank you again for having me, Jaime. This is such an important conversation because I feel like through conversation and community is how we are able to pause and really do more and not necessarily have to go through motions, like do more with soul and intention. So thank you for having me. Okay, so my 60 seconds. I've actually been working on this a lot lately because I am having a pause in my career, but really, so it's perfect timing, I guess, to have this conversation. I would say that looking back, my climb has always been about brand building, team building, really taking great ideas that solve real wants and needs and jobs to do, desires in the world, and how to bring those forward in a really shared experience. And I've done that at General Mills. I was there for many, many years, working on brands like Cheerios and Old El Paso and Pillsbury. Left corporate world to start my own tech startup called Bread Stamp. And that was highest of highs and lowest of lows as a tech entrepreneur. Split my time between Minneapolis and New York, where I found a lot more traction when it came to females in technology. And then also just the whole notion of consumer technology was really bigger on the coast before it was bigger here in Minneapolis. I sold that after growing it to a few million users to Taylor Corporation here in Minnesota, which is one of the largest graphic arts and printing companies in the world. So they're really interested in that mobile technology. So that was great. And then I went right into healthcare, health insurance, trying to figure out that space again in the hopes that, deep insights, consumer insights could build great business. Quickly left that after about 16 months, realized that health insurance was not a space for me. I'm sure I'm the only person that's ever said that on your podcast, right? And then from there, I left to do more startup work and advisory work. And through that, I met a human who was looking for the next head of marketing and brand strategy at Caribou Coffee. So I left my founding chapter to go back into corporate for about 6 years. And I just recently left at the end of this year. And now I'm exploring the great frontier of what does that next step look like?
Yeah. What I love about your story, a couple things, is you've done corporate to your own, back to corporate, back to your own, thing. And I know for me, like I've gotten to a point where I'm like, I don't even know if anyone would hire me anymore. So this is kind of my own plan because I've been so far out of the corporate world. I mean, we work with them, right? But not kind of being in corporate. So did each of those moments, because they are a big transition, there's so many people that sitting in corporate going like, wow, she's done this twice now, right? Meaning she's taken the leap to go back and bet on herself again. Did each of those feel like its own mountain, or does it feel like what are the ups and downs of that feel like?
Yeah, that's a great question. To me, it's been less about the straight line or the straight climb, which I've never climbed a mountain like you have, Jaime, but like I would imagine with switchbacks, and even just reading your book, Surviving Greatness, you talk a little bit about this. Like, there is no such thing as just going straight up, right? There just isn't. And also I wouldn't have wanted that, because even though maybe on paper it looks great, it doesn't fill your soul. It doesn't fill your cup. And you have to make mistakes, and you have to figure out, you know what, this isn't the best way to do it, and switch back. And so I think of it as actually a body of work. I don't think of it as we talked about this on the podcast, actually the last podcast. I don't think of it as so much as a ladder. I know people are playing with different words for it. I think actually the idea of climbing a mountain, I mean, the mountain itself is going to have many different dynamics to it, right? And
Totally.
It require different skills.
If you think of the analogy of it's going to have weather conditions and terrain conditions, and right, there's a lot of different things, altitude, all of these things that impact you in different ways and might set you on a different course. But what I love about you is you look at your career as a portfolio of things that all lean on your strengths instead of tied to a title, which I think is hard. As humans, status and ego is a thing, right? Getting to be a CMO or a CFO or a CEO is like something people reach for. But I also think sometimes those titles come with things, like you said, that don't fill your soul.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because when you think about titles, the only time that I've ever felt both the blessing and the burden of a title is in trying to explain who I am and what I do in an organization. And so I think it's more about that than anything else, at least for me. I mean, my happiest times have been when I haven't had a title and it's been doing work.
Yeah. So if someone who, obviously you're well known, but from the outside that looks at your journey, what's something that maybe people wouldn't know about that, what that journey's been like, or a certain part of that?
That's a great question. You know, on paper, it does look like I've done a bunch of different things in a bunch of different ways. And so I feel like for most people, and maybe this is even part of the question that you asked, is that it may feel really, what's the word? Mercurial? Like very like hot, you know, just the fact that there's been like moments where it's flamed out or had a big rise. And for me, what I have to guard against always is just that slow burn, that cognitive dissonance, the detachment of feeling almost like not kind of like feeling aligned with the value that I bring, who I am, what my head is thinking, what my heart is feeling, what my gut is knowing, and then how that comes back out in terms of articulation of the work. And so when I've been at my best, I've been very aligned with the leadership, aligned with the mission and the purpose. You know, at the core, companies really, I believe, are four things: their purpose, their people, their process, and their platforms, right? And that's how we know what the work is to do and do the work. And so when one of those things, I mean, those are big areas. I'm not trying to belittle it or downsize it. It's very complicated. But when those things aren't working together, that's when you see lack of growth. You see burnout, right? You see that dissonance. And so I've just been, as I get older and I do more of this work, I start to realize that sitting down on Monday morning and talking about how I worked all weekend and comparing stories with the person next to me, right? It's just not a thing anymore. Like really, actually, the best work and the best leaders are not sharing those stories because they are doing what they need to do to align before they show up at the table.
I love that. Is there a moment in the climb where you remember it was kind of one of those big obstacle moments, or those moments where everything might have looked great on the outside, everyone else, right, to the rest of the world, but on the inside, something was stirring or brewing or, didn't feel as good for you? And what did that moment look like? What did you do? How'd you get through?
Well, I've had those moments. I mean, I'm trying to think if I can share one that's not necessarily, I don't want to, again, alignment, it's a two-way street. I'm not trying to put anyone down. I've had them, let's just say that. And I've had them quite regularly, but truly what I do about that and where I've gotten past it or through it is through sitting down and grounding in reality, right? Taking the time to ground in reality, opening to possibilities so that I can lead with love and then take aligned action. And that's a 4-step process that truly is how I'm moving forward. And I realize when I've been doing my best work, when I've had those moments of, well, this is just not right. Like this feels awful. for everyone. It's just actually slowing down and doing that work. You can do them anytime, anywhere.
Right. So this hit me, and obviously we know this. But your message here is that at those moments of misalignment, you didn't blame someone else. You did the work. And I think that's the missing piece sometimes as we grow and we climb and we do the next thing and we get the next title. I don't think as many leaders, I mean, you're like the queen of inner work. Like that's where you inspire me to do the work. So but I think this message is important as you've been doing that all along. Many of us get to the top, which is my story. Like I just grinded it out for years and years and years and got to the top and went, you've got to be kidding me. Like this is what I've been slaving for and I don't even like it.
Yeah.
And then I started doing the inner work, because I needed it for my own just well-being. So I'd love for you to just share, like, what was the thing that got you? Is it always been part of you as a family, like that got you recognize the inner work instead of thinking someone else was going to solve it for you?
Great question. I am very blessed to have a very self-aware mother who, I mean, at the earliest age, like instead of taking me to go buy a sweater or a new top and, we'd go back to school, she'd be like, first, we're going to actually go and get a facial. And I say that and it sounds, by the way, super bougie and privileged. I totally realize that. But her whole point was, if you don't feel good, if you don't feel comfortable in your skin, and that was her articulation for it, it doesn't matter where we go shopping and what you do, And so when I turned 40, she gifted me the experience of a retreat, my first retreat. And, I'm a huge fan of Jaime's retreats, as she knows, but it was my first retreat before you were doing retreats.
Yeah.
And I learned so much in that time where, I really learned how to meditate. And this is almost 15 years ago, right? I was at the height of fear and vulnerability with my startup. And so to have someone gift me that moment, it's life-changing. And so I really have to credit my mom for it. I mean, she's still doing it today, laughing because I'm going on another learning adventure, and I'm doing it through a center that she was the one who showed me, taught me about. So I know not everyone has a mom like mine, like Diane McCormick. I mean, and trust me, she was a psychologist. So there were really good parts of that, like that, and some really hard parts about that, because I never got away with just saying I was fine or my day was okay, or it's kind of grueling growing up in a household like that. But, I think if there's one thing that I've always tried to do, then pass it on to my team and my son and my husband, and, just that gift of inner work.
And that, I mean, most people who know me know that that's kind of the stage I've moved into, is sharing that. Meaning I always believe I need to go first, but then I also need to not gatekeep the things I'm learning if someone else can use them. And I love I hope I am that mom, actually, because I mean, Olivia and I have been on, retreats. I've gifted her. I mean, we just had a whole crystal meditation thing last night. But at almost 21, I'm trying to give her the tools to live in this world.
Yep.
And that's, I think, the message for leaders is it doesn't matter if you're 50 or 60 or whatever age you are, like you need those tools.
Yeah.
Have to, because this world is a very different world than the world we grew up in. Or when I was 21, I didn't have the stressors that this generation has, and we're dealing with it too. Right. And I think most leaders don't do that work. So what I hear in your story, and I just want to clarify this, is there wasn't like a moment of burnout, a moment where you're like, I mean, you hear of health crisis and like all these different things that happen that make you reset. You kind of always had it, and you've just been building the tool set.
Yeah. Thankfully, I have not had it yet.
Yeah.
Let's keep it going. But you're right. I think there's been a lot of preventative care and teaching. And, it's so interesting, Jaime, because I think about it, obviously we do it with our children, and I think that's amazing. But I also feel a huge, and it's a joyful responsibility to create those containers for team, So like in my office, you come into my office and there's crystals and there were candy, like you could grab like one, maybe both, maybe one or the other. But it's so important to just take a moment, even if people have their own beliefs and their own rituals, whatnot, but just to take a moment to actually have a conversation about what those rituals are.
We just had our annual planning a few weeks ago, and each day, so we had 3 days, we were off site, and each day we started with a 5-minute meditation and grounding. Right. And it was led on someone's phone, but it was the most wonderful thing. Because you think about, you're flying in the morning and you're like, okay, let's put my strategy hat on. And I think most of us don't ground ourselves in the morning, or we jump onto the call before we, just jump into emails. We don't do that. We just come from whatever we were doing in the morning, right? Coming in sideways to work. So what are those things for you now, right? If you're kind of leading the way, and I agree with the word responsibility, once you know these tools, it is a responsibility to share them with people who are ready for them, whatever that looks like.
Right.
What's that look like for you now? What are those things that your go-tos to kind of manage your own energy?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk about them. I'll start with the one that is accessible at all times and literally takes a minute. And that is just deep breathing, right? And it's so simple. I know people talk about it, but at the core, all of these things that we're talking about just get you back to mindfulness, right? Like being in the moment. And I think that you can actually move much faster. So this isn't just a soft skill. Like this is actually a skill to learn that can be very productive. What you're doing is you're taking away the performativeness of it and making it productive, which I love. But just the deep breath and like truly deep breathing. I notice still, even after doing this work, and I'll talk about some other modalities too, but even after, almost 15 years of this work, I still will catch myself holding my breath. Like when I'm in a board meeting.
And like take a breath because I'm like, I don't think I was even breathing, or I was shallow breathing for so long.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the worst things that we can do. And actually, again, it doesn't help our brains do anything productive, right? And there's so much research on that, right? Like
your cardiovascular system, your everything. It helps you just function better.
Right. And so the idea of just taking deep breaths. So now whenever I catch myself holding my breath, I not only say to myself, okay, breathe. I literally count to 3 and I take 3 breaths. If I'm by myself, I close my eyes. I put one hand on my heart, one hand on my gut. And I just actually feel it for 3 breaths, 3 to 5, if I can swing it. But we all know what it's like when we're like crunching on something. Or if I'm in a meeting and I catch myself holding my breath, then I just breathe intentionally, really deeply, and I'll, look normal on the outside.
Literally oxygen back to your brain again.
Totally. So that is like, I think that is just the biggest thing. If we could all just promise each other that we're going to breathe more, then, I think that business and the world would be a much better, kinder place. What I do that's what I do to sort of go throughout the day as I feel like I need it. But I typically almost always start my morning with a meditation, some sort of learning, definitely a cup of coffee. I will forever be a cup of coffee girl, hot coffee, team hot in the morning. And if I can, during the golden hour, it's just such a beautiful time, which is that time like that where, just before it starts to get light, it's kind of this moment of golden and pinks. And so I'll try and find a place that's just really restorative to do that. Sometimes my meditations are 5 minutes. Sometimes they're 20 minutes. There's no like right or wrong, but after I meditate, have my cup of coffee, do a quick little learning or reflection, then I will typically journal and just go through and be like, okay, what am I noticing today, right? That's the grounding piece. How am I opening myself up to possibilities? What's interesting? What am I curious about? What questions am I going to actually solve today or go after today? Maybe not solve, but ask, right? And that even goes back to the responsibility of the team. And then going back to that, like leading with love, how can I show up for other people? Starting with myself. How can I show up for myself? How can I show up for my friends, my family, and my team? And then from there, like, what are the 3 to 5 aligned actions I'm going to take today? And that's what I journal every day. So I do have a pretty firm ritual, but it just depends on how much time I have to do it.
Well, and I do something less firm, but I have I think I talked about it, but the 5-minute journal, because I can't do like just free writing. But it just is 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things that would make today great, affirmations, and it's quick, but it goes through your process, probably just a little bit quicker, but it does set the tone for your day. It's kind of like, this is what I want to achieve. And those 3 things that would make today great typically aren't like major business accomplishments. It's more small things. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, you close it out with 5 minutes as well. So I love kind of bookending my day with that because it puts the intention on it, but it also makes the things that maybe wouldn't seem things to celebrate.
Right.
Like it makes me celebrate them.
I love that. Yes. And to be honest, I have to get better at the recap at the end of the day because you are supposed to bookend it like you do. I usually just think of one thing I'm grateful for because I'm the person who loves to read. And that's when I find that I love to read is at night. So I have to literally like shut myself down and be like, I'm getting up tomorrow morning at 6:45, no matter what. I know it's kind of late for some people, but that's my, go-to. And I don't want to be tired all day. So like I have to kind of close it out.
Yeah, I love that. I want to talk a little bit about the perspective shifts as you've kind of gone through your journey that you've gone through. Is there a belief or mindset that you had to unlearn to become the leader that you are today? Have to leave them behind? And what's one that sticks out for you?
For sure. I mean, I feel like I've always been creative and curious, always. And I was often shut down for that, especially earlier in my career, right? Because creativity wasn't building the spreadsheet. Creativity was not something that you could necessarily create full attribution in the financial attribution model brain. As I've gotten older and, I've developed more skills, obviously I've balanced that a little bit so that I know my audience and can speak to my audience and think through different elements of business. It's interesting because I feel like what I've done in my career has been taken the creativity and probably built more structure around it so that it was a little bit more palatable for corporate.
Yeah, I love that. I think to say the same thing about the curiosity is in a large environment that has politics at play, curiosity can be misread so easily. And so that's where I always say I typically had a new job in corporate every 18 months because I would just get like poking in too many people's areas and I'd be like, all right, time to go do something else because I'm getting in trouble here, right? As a builder, like that curiosity can come across the wrong way when it's just a natural tendency, right? To want to understand things.
Yes. I'm laughing because pretty much every job I've had, pretty much every job I've had, or every boss that I've ever had has had to pause because questions for me it's about building and communicating. And when I feel like communication or teamwork isn't really happening, I'll lead with questions. And so sometimes it's misinterpreted as like getting into other people's business or, and it's actually just more about sharing ideas. And that's one of the reasons that I love the idea of grounding. And I've honestly, when my team would ask questions, that to me was like joyous, right? Because I was like, great, ask the uncomfortable questions. Let's have the uncomfortable conversations. Let's do it. We're going to come up with better solutions with the conversation. But it is people who are not self-aware, threatened. It's a real big deal.
People that haven't done the work, that doesn't feel good.
Right.
And we've all had leaders like that. I mean, and they're not bad people. They just haven't the work. And so when someone is doing the work and comes in, right, and is in that growth, that can cause some of this transformation or this outgrowing of roles and people and companies. How do you define success sitting here today versus 10 years ago, 15 years ago? How has that changed for you?
Well, I mean, I think financially, I'm in a much better place, which is I'm grateful for, right? I've done the things, saved the money, done some, still, not done working and putting on that retirement hat by any stretch of the imagination.
But you have some freedom in that.
Exactly. And so now I'm really thinking about what I want to do next and who I want to do it with. And the who is even more important than the what.
Yep.
That is truly, and I love working. I love what I do. For me, it's been a way that I've actually parented. It's a way that my brother and I are super close because he's in business too, and we'll hop on and have the calls. So I don't believe that you necessarily have to separate it out. I think that fulfillment is really the end goal, not balance.
Yeah.
And for me, I have more, if I look at my plate, right? As you look at, putting one more thing on your plate, like for me, it's actually just about making sure I have what I want on my plate at all times and being really mindful about what I say yes to and what I say no to.
Yeah. For me, it's so different words, but similar is what gives me energy versus what doesn't. Because I'm good at a number of things that I could say yes to.
Yeah.
They just don't reciprocate the energy.
Right.
So my energy is one way and I am a people pleaser to a fault. And so I will say yes to all the things and to help all the people. And then I deplete my own energy.
Yeah. Jaime, I feel like one of the best things, you talk a lot about CEO, right? And Chief Energy Officer. You are your own Chief Energy Officer. And I love that. It's so important.
So what's something that you value today that maybe at the beginning of your career you didn't value at the same level?
I think the fact that earlier in my career, I really felt like I needed to be on all the time, that I couldn't take a moment off, or that, there was only one way to work. Maybe that's a better way of saying it, and the one way to work was to answer emails seconds after they land in your inbox. It's interesting because I'm working on a project right now that is a brand building project. I'm really excited about it. And I just got back from New York City before the holiday break. And it was so fun to be in New York, knowing that I was working on this project and just opening up my eyes to everything that was around and taking it all in and thinking about like, okay, this is what's happening. Like, this is the latest and greatest in marketing. This is the latest and greatest in brand building happening, at a pivotal time, which is holiday season in New York City in the Upper East Side, and it was like a candy land. So everything that I did, I was able to actually take some of that and put it back into thinking about the project I was working on. I would have never, ever thought that could be considered work when I was younger.
Well, that lesson, I think it is so important. And it's not just, it's also the quiet time the walks in nature where you can get that clarity in different ways. We think it's just push a little harder, right? Grind a little bit more, put a few more hours in, and we're going to get the output that we want. Yes. When reach a point where that no longer is the correct formula.
Right. Totally. And that is honestly one of the reasons I loved going on your retreat, because it was exactly that. Like, that was a moment where it was like stillness and going back and taking the time. And from that, there were some, great connections I made, which is, I know, other focus, but also that became because I was more connected with myself.
Yes. And no one, this is the interesting work. And I think this is the theme for the podcast, is no one's going to tell you have to do that work.
Right.
They might tell you have to answer more emails, right? Or make more spreadsheets or do that one more work thing. But no one's going to tell you have to do the inner work. Like, that's why I want to tell these stories, right? That's the most important piece. So if we move to action, like what do we do? You've told our story, you've shared some things. What advice would you give to a high achieving leader who's listening, who's feeling just at a pivot point? Maybe that stuck feeling, which to me isn't a bad feeling. It's just an indication that you need to shift something. What would you tell them to do first?
First, stop. Pause, which it goes back to a lot of what we're talking about now. But the very first thing is just to ground in the reality, to notice what you're feeling, notice why you're feeling it, notice what's going on around you, spend time in that. I promise you, answers are in the grounding. Now, I think about one of the most successful campaigns. It's very recent. I talk about this all the time, like on stages and in rooms and with marketing students. It was one that we did a couple summers ago for Caribou Coffee, where we created a dating show that wound up, blowing out results for the new products that we launched. And I'll tell you what, yes, it was a creative solution and we worked with an amazing agency, an amazing team. But what came in it is grounding ourselves in the reality. Who are we trying to reach? What do these humans care about? Right? How can we actually work with them in the channels and the modalities that they're most interested in? All of that came through the grounding. And I think that is, instead of actually just moving forward, just taking a moment to pause.
Simple. Oh, that's something everyone who's listening right now can just do.
For sure.
What's something you wish someone had told you? I call it base camp, right? When you were starting the climb of the mountain, what's the thing that you would now tell somebody like my daughter, Olivia, who you know very well? What would you tell her in this moment that you wish you knew back then?
Don't compromise who you are and what you believe in. Kindness and goodness always wins. It's just, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So I think the only time I'd ever failed at something is when I really lost myself.
Let's just let that sit for a second. I think it's true. The only time I feel like I've failed is when I've gone against my intuition, right? Where it's told me this doesn't feel right. There's something here. I should be asking different questions. And I did it anyway. And it led to some pretty big mistakes, specifically as an entrepreneur. And I think most of us as leaders are almost that corporate, and nothing against corporate. I'm just going to say that corporate model almost suppresses that in us. Like you said, if you just stopped and took a breath, you know what the right answer is. It's just the world is telling you the answer is different. And it's very hard without that inner work to stand up to the world and say, no, this is the right answer for me right now. And I think that is the next step for a lot of these leaders. Leaders that are listening, what's one message of hope, maybe from hearing your story, that they can take away from this?
From the time we're living in, yes, I know it's so interesting. I was just going through 2025 year in review on LinkedIn, right? And like reading everyone, and everyone was talking about 2025, the big dumpster fire and all the things. And I'm like, well, first of all, being uncomfortable is okay. In fact, it's good for you, from time to time. And I think what's exciting about the time that we're in is there has never been more opportunity to take that moment to pause. There are so many tools, apps, whatnot, that you can use to actually just make sure that you get your head on straight, that you really ground, that you're really strategic about the actions that you take. So the tools that are there. I also feel like there's never been a better time with all the technology at our fingertips to create personalized experiences at scale. I'll talk about New York. I just came back and I stayed at One Hotels for the first time, which is a Starwood property. They believe, it's mid-tier luxury. So it's not like Four Seasons, but it was interesting because they believe that you can be both luxurious and have eco-friendly experiences, right? And it was just the whole thing from the moment that I booked my room, was able to sign up for my preferences, the experiences that I had with every single person, including the technology. So again, going back to purpose, people, process, platforms, the fact that like there isn't a bottle of water anywhere in the building, not just because they are trying to avoid plastic, but because they filter every drop at the hotel. So whether you're drinking out of the tap, whether you're washing your hair, whatever you're doing, it's all filtered water, right? Just these little touches of being able to personalize at scale, like as a business person, it's huge. It's really exciting.
Yeah. Well, I love that. Like there's creation in that. That's the creativity that you talked about, which we all have. It just comes out in different forms. But I think it's a great reminder for all of us that if you're navigating this transformation, which isn't a bad thing, it just means change, that sometimes you got to get back to being curious, being a beginner again.
Yes. And I love that. Yes.
Being curious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not feeling like, why don't I know this? Or why does this feel different? I think there's a lot of judgment that can come up during that transformation that does us no good.
Okay, Jaime, you probably know this quote. What is the quote? It's like the most important thing isn't to be right. The most important thing is to get it right. No. We're going to
That's okay.
This part out.
We'll look it up. We'll put it in a show notes.
There is this like really amazing quote about, it's not about being right. It's about, like asking the questions to get to right. Like that's.
Yeah. It's about the journey.
It's about the journey.
Not about the destination. I mean, that's kind of it's, and this is the thing I want all leaders to hear is just, there's nothing broken when you feel the way you're feeling right now. So if there's anyone who's feeling stuck, who's feeling burnt out, there's a lesson in here. And I know it's the last thing you probably want to hear, but it doesn't mean something's wrong. It actually means your body, the way you're feeling, is reacting to your current situation. It's reacting to something that doesn't feel aligned somewhere in your values. And you talked about the values at the very beginning. And I think if more leaders did personal values exercises and really understood how they could live those out in whatever role they're in, right? A stay-at-home mom to an entrepreneur to a corporate executive, you can live those values out in whatever role.
For sure.
Whatever stage of life. And I think that back to your grounding word that you used quite a bit here is like, that's an opportunity to get grounded back in who you are and what really matters to you. And I don't think enough of us, myself included, do that often enough.
Yeah.
We don't go back to that place.
Well, you said something really important, I believe, in that things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Like that's
hard. When you're in it, it's hard to believe that. Except for every story that I tell, that I hear from other leaders is the moments that were that fiery moments, right? The moments where they were like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Are the moments that they recount as being the most key milestones in their journey up the mountain. It's not the easy path, the easy days that we remember. It's the ones that are kind of forged in fire and pressurize us a little bit. So I just appreciate you sharing your story. I want to kind of wrap with, where can people connect with you, find out more about what you've done, what you're doing, about the book and how the book is coming along? But what's the easiest way for them to connect and learn a little bit more about you and maybe follow some of your inspiration?
LinkedIn is probably the most consistent. I also am developing a lot of this stuff on www.erinnewkirk.com. But I mean, LinkedIn is great. I love going on LinkedIn and seeing what other people are doing, commenting and parting up a storm. So that's where you can probably find me the most consistently.
And then get some bonus round questions. So to wrap us up, what's your go-to song when you need to reset your own energy?
I'm going to cheat because for me, I don't have like a pump it up song. I have a resettle in my body playlist, but I use Spotify and I like songs like crazy. So I will just go into my liked songs and just play the first song that shows up for me. Yeah. And it's usually like something I know the words to, so I could really feel it. But for me, it's about playlists. Like it's so interesting because I just went through and So I had different ones for different times and different seasons. And like when I go away for a weekend with friends, I'll create a playlist that, so easy, obviously. But, so for me, it's more about the playlist.
Sharing some of these playlists with me on Spotify.
Okay.
Hopefully you will. Give me whatever your Spotify name is. Okay.
Well,
What's a book or a podcast or something that you took in that really changed your perspective when you needed that shift?
I know that most of your followers have read your books and follow you. So I will say that truly Culture Climb was huge. You know this because you helped me Keystone helped me work through some elements when I was doing some teamwork. So Culture Climb and Surviving Greatness are huge in my list. So I follow authors. I tend to follow people versus particular books. Lisa Sun wrote a book called Gravitas, and it's about different superpowers for confidence. And I think that's one area that I've had to do a lot of work in, is how to be a more confident person. I'm a pretty confident leader. I'm a pretty confident business person. I'm pretty confident in my curiosity and creativity. But when it comes down to it, it's always easier for me to kind of work behind a brand than necessarily work as Erin Newkirk. This is a personal brand. That book was huge for me. It just helped me understand how I can actually be myself and feel confident in most situations, and what I need to work on too.
Love that, the authenticity of success. I mean, that really is the definition, is to be yourself as you grow and evolve, right? And have these new challenges. So I love that. Okay. And the last question, I'm going to give you a billboard on a major highway, and you could put one message on it for every executive to see. What would you put on it?
Alignment is not a soft skill.
I love it.
I don't know. I had to work on that one a little bit, maybe, Jaime. But I will say there was something about alignment. Maybe you can help workshop it with me. There is something about alignment, and it is not a soft skill. Like, it is key to everything. And it's your alignment. Your team, your
according to the strategy, all of the things. Yeah. And we all know that feeling. You started off this conversation talking about those moments of misalignment. It's friction.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel it when you're like have momentum, and then all of a sudden it's a person or a meeting or something that like slows it down. You can feel that friction. And I love the idea of it not being about the people.
Right.
It's about the people not being aligned in some way. Yes. Getting curious about what that means, because I think there's a whole different level of conversation we can have when we're searching for alignment and we just don't have it. Because then it's about us.
Right.
We can fix this.
Right.
We can't fix other people. We can't force other people to do that work.
Right. Yes, because if you're no longer the person that others feel alignment with, or if you're not feeling alignment with the others, I would love for us to be able to be like, as a society, be able to say, okay, let's take a beat here and understand this a little bit more. And then let's part as friends. I just think there's so much to alignment. It's kind of everything.
It is. Well, you are everything to me. I appreciate you way beyond the podcast. I appreciate your support, your friendship, your mentorship. And I'm really glad to have you be my first guest here and to share your wisdom with our listeners. So thank you for being here and for doing this.
Thank you.
Success isn't just about reaching the top. It's about what you discover once you're there. Here on View from the Top, we explore the stories, the setbacks, and the inner work that redefine what success really means. If this episode resonated with you, I'd encourage you to share it with someone who might need it right now. And to stay connected, make sure and subscribe so you get notified when we release new episodes. You can connect with me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, or visit my website at jamietates.com. All of the links are in the show notes. Thank you for listening to View from the Top. We'll see you at the top and beyond.